What's the culture like in your business? You might have the sales, you might have the profit, you might have the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if you don't have culture, how are you able to scale your company? I have none other than CSP and founder of Better Culture, Brett Hogeveen, on today's episode. We're going to be diving in how to take your already probably good company and make it great. We're going to bring them up right after we thank the sponsor. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Brett Hogeveen. Brett, how are you feeling today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to get into this and help everyone with their culture because I see so many businesses, they might be really great at sales. They started the company, they're doing well, they have a team, and I find more problems are internal than external. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, every organization has a culture. The name of my company is Better Culture. And if you want to have a better company, if you got to do something to make a better culture. There's a lot of stuff that happens inside of organizations that undermines ultimately what the company exists to do, right? And the cleaner, the more effective that culture is, the better your business outcomes are going to be.
What's the easiest thing a company could do to improve the culture?
Easiest. Well, um, you know, there's a I don't want to pitch a product exactly, but we have a product that I like to say helps put culture on autopilot for organizations that helps every employee figure out what are the attitudes and the behaviors that they could show up with and just get a little bit better consistently over time. I think that's the easiest thing on the market to improve your culture is use a system that does a lot of the work for you.
I gotcha. Okay, so here's the follow up because I know easiest isn't always the one you should do or the best. So what is the
Yeah.
best thing you can do to improve culture?
Well, that is a much more complicated question. Uh,
We got a
the
minute. Please
yeah,
elaborate.
the best thing you can do is have a plan. Treat culture as a strategy for what your organization can do strategically to make progress steadily and continuously over time on your culture and your employee experience. And what I find is most organizations, almost every organization of any decent size has a strategic plan. Those same organizations, the same leaders, the same CEOs will tell me that they care about culture, that people matter, that culture matters. And then when I say, great, what's your strategic plan to make your culture steadily better over time? They're like, we don't have that. I say, well, then, I mean, you have a strategic plan for your business and culture matters. Why don't those two connect? And so I think that's the most important thing that organizations can have is as an actual strategy for no matter how good you are today, how you're going to be better a month from now, 3 months from now, a year from now, 3 years from now, etc. When it comes to your employee experience and your culture.
I know there's someone listening going, well, I already have good culture. How
Mm-hmm.
can we help them improve it?
I mean, good is good, better is better, right? And every organization, it tends to be the companies with good culture already that value good culture,
Mm-hmm.
that understand the benefits that it gives, not just to their business, but to their quality of life as well. It is much more enjoyable to be the leader of an organization that has a fantastic culture where people like their job, are committed to the mission, etc., than it is to manage a company where people hate their jobs. I promise you, there's a lot better quality of life in that example. And what happens is companies that have a culture that's in the 80th, 85th, 90th percentile, they know what that value is. And those organizations are the ones that call us most often and say, hey, how can we get better? Right. So it's really interesting that most of the organizations with really unhealthy cultures, because they don't prioritize it, they don't make any progress. The ones that are already pretty darn good, those are the ones that are usually most hungry to say, how can we get better?
I got to play devil's advocate because I know there's people who know they have good culture and it's got to be better, but and I don't want to pigeonhole anyone to saying we have bad culture. I don't think anyone inherently would think they have bad culture, but what would you say to a company that they might not know where it's at? Because I think everyone has these, as entrepreneurs and visionaries, I think we all operate with these rose-colored shades. It's like the whole thing could be on fire, burning to the ground. You're like, no, we're doing good. We're actually looking at some investments next quarter. It's like, what are
Yeah.
you talking about? So
Yeah.
no one has bad culture, but what would you say to someone who just doesn't have a grasp on where they're at? Have you ever
Yeah.
seen it's actually trending towards good, or is it usually it needs some rehab?
So I'll be the one to push back and say, yes, some people do have bad culture. And one way that you can figure out which one you are, do you have really great culture or not so great culture, is you can measure it, right? And so at Better Culture, we do employee engagement surveys. We have a really robust culture survey that's a good fit for small to medium types of businesses. If you're some multinational that needs your employee engagement survey in 100 languages, that ain't us. But what's really important is every once in a while, are you actually asking your employees their opinion about the job, the company, their manager, the organization? Are you getting some data? And if you do that measurement, and whoever a survey provider is, they say, hey, look, you're in the 92nd percentile, then you can know you have a pretty good culture. If they say, not great news, you're in the fourth percentile, then you got bad culture. Okay. And that's an opportunity to get better, right? But if you don't know where you are, if you don't have any data, no information, then the odds that you actually make progress or decide to invest in the right places are very low.
Do you have that as like a PDF people can get? Do they have to get a product? Like that sounds very intriguing. Where can they find that? Or
Yeah,
how
I
would they
mean,
get it?
so if you go to betterculture.com, there's a services drop down, and on that services, culture surveys are one of those things. So you can go to betterculture.com and you can see what we do with respect to culture surveys. And would be happy to talk with anybody that wants a little bit more information about how you measure culture. That's we're kind of geeks about that. So there's some smart ways to do it. There are some not smart ways to do it. And for goodness sakes, don't try to measure your culture if you're not going to do anything about it. So that's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to culture surveys is they do it. They ask employees for their time and their input and their opinions, and then they don't communicate back. They don't say, hey, here's what we
Uh,
heard. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we're changing. What you do that two or three times and employees will just roll their eyes when you ask for their opinions because they think it
and that
doesn't matter.
doesn't make for good culture.
That does not make for good culture.
Well, I appreciate you making that resource available because honestly, it sounds intriguing and um, it sounds like a quick win.
It's the
I mean,
right
if
first step. If you want
yeah.
to invest in culture, measuring and understanding where you are is the right first step.
Now, do you recommend doing that? Probably not weekly, but monthly, quarterly, yearly. What frequency would you say?
So it's a question that is highly debated in the company culture space. There are vendors out there that sell software that can do regular pulse checks over time. It'll sample, let's say you have 1,000 employees, it'll sample your employees. Maybe 40 of them get a survey every week or every month. And so you're just constantly getting a random sample of data and information, these pulse checks about your culture. I think that's information overload for most organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I think what's better is just every year or every 18 months, do one good survey where you really get a robust amount of information and do that then repeatedly every year or two, every 18 months. I think that is definitely sufficient to understanding where you are, what some opportunities for improvement are, and then it gives you some time to actually do some stuff, work on some things before you measure again. That's our advice with our clients.
Would you say someone roll this out and try it for a year or two, or make this part of your culture and it's no different than accounting and sales and marketing and all the rest moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, culture should be a priority. And then there are a few basic things that you want to do regularly. One is measure. And then the second is have a plan for improvement. And that plan for improvement, should have some budget attached to it too. And you can rotate dollars different places. But if you'll prioritize some investment in your culture on a regular annual basis, that's when you're likely to see progress, is when we prioritize it with a budget to say, no, we're investing in this over time because culture can be an asset to your business, but you have to treat it that way.
What's the biggest benefit of improving the culture you've found?
The biggest benefit. Well, I'll go two directions on this. Okay. I think I mean, Only two directions. I don't know if I can deliver on what I just promised. But number one is better business performance. Okay. So if you have a great culture where people like what they do, enjoy coming to work, they say, thank goodness it's Monday, they believe in the product, in the service, in the team, etc. They'll work harder, they'll produce better work, they'll be more proud of the work that they produce, you'll have better outcomes. Okay. So better actual business measurable metrics is the number one thing that most business people are interested in, and culture is directly tied to that. Number two, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's not small. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, if you're a mid-level or upper level manager, I promise you, having a better culture will improve your quality of life. Okay. You will like your job more when your team likes what they do, when they're engaged, when there's not unhealthy conflict, all these things. And we spend a lot of our time at work. And if you can make your work more rewarding, more enjoyable, that is not like a fringe benefit. That is a really key, important thing that more leaders should be thinking about. How can I enjoy the 30-40% of my adult waking hours that I spend at work? How can I make sure that that's a fulfilling part of my life, not a stressful part of my life?
Why don't you think more businesses focus on culture?
Well, I think they misunderstand it. I think organizations know that people matter. They know in some sense that culture matters, but they don't have a real accurate understanding of what culture really is and what it means to have a better culture. Would you agree with that? Does that make sense?
It does.
So, what I see is they misunderstand culture. They think it's this squishy thing that just means everyone kind of is happy all the time. And that's not really what culture is. What culture really is it's the attitudes and the behaviors that a group of people sort of come to expect from one another. So if you want a better culture, what you have to do is figure out what are the attitudes and behaviors I would love people to show up here with every single day, and then do something to intentionally shape those attitudes and behaviors. If you're in the if you have a so-so culture right now because the attitudes and behaviors people show up with is they they roll in, they grumble about their commute or whatever went on the day before. They sort of begrudgingly start their work. They kind of, you know, like, I don't know, have whatever the culture is, they kind of complain about their manager or the company. They take as long of a lunch break as they can. They kind of come back and sort of do some more stuff until they feel like they're close enough to 5 o'clock that they can head home for the day. Like those are attitudes and those are behaviors, and that's your culture, right? So if you'd like to have a better, higher performing team, get specific on, well, what attitudes would you like to shift and change? What behaviors would you like to shift and change? And then do you have some mechanism to change those things, to shift those things? Because that's what it means to move from a lousy culture to a better culture. And once you have that, you have people that are happy to be there, that want to do their work, that are better connected, et cetera. And it produces the outcomes that we're looking for.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of if you take care of the people the same way you take care of the clients, they're going to be better off and you're going to be able to take care of your clients better.
I mean, I'm a big believer in taking care of my people, but it's not just that, right? Because what you actually have on a team is you have a distribution of people. You've got stars that are showing up with the right attitudes and behaviors, that are high performers, that are, just knocking the cover off the ball every day. And then you got vacuums, people that are not doing their fair share amount of the work, that are hard to work with, that are toxic, that are negative. And the goal of an effective leader or manager or culture builder is to make sure that I don't treat those two groups of people the same, right? I don't love on them equally. I don't say, hey, I want to make sure everybody's always happy. Everybody's always actually, that first group needs to be celebrated and promoted and praised and paid more and, like put on a pedestal. And this other group needs to be made a little bit uncomfortable, but invested in and pushed and said, I want you to be so successful. I want your attitudes and your behaviors to be in line with what makes somebody successful here, but they're not right now. So how can I help you with that, right? What can I do, again, to shift performance, to shift culture? And so I think oftentimes when people hear the word culture, they just think it means, oh, just give everyone a pat on the back and make sure everyone can work whatever schedule they want and all these things. Not necessarily. Culture is just, what do I need as far as attitudes and behaviors to have a high performing team? And how do I shape that intentionally?
So how do you differentiate the degree of, okay, the high performer is great. Maybe we'll touch on them, but they're pretty self-explanatory. They're awesome. Everyone wants more of them. You got me thinking about the toxic ones and the lower performing. How do you draw the line of, okay, we've tried, they're just dragging us down, versus maybe you don't treat them the same, but how do you encourage them? How do you get to turn them into someone that maybe they won't ever be a star player, but they'll at least be more tolerable and an A player compared to where they were?
Sure.
Take them from a D or a C to at least a strong B plus.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I'd be happy to share a few of the things that we share when we do training, leadership development training, workshops, etc. The first thing that I would say is be intentional about the expectations that you're setting, and about sort of raise their sights for their own performance a little bit. Believe that they can hit a certain level of performance, whether that's attitude, whether that's professionalism, whether that's effort, whether that's whatever that is. It starts with being clear about what success looks like and being willing to have a conversation, not a punitive conversation, not an I'm mad at you conversation, a conversation that says, I want you to be successful. My job here is to help you be a star, to be successful. Here's what that looks like. Here's what I'm seeing in your current performance. How can we work together to close that gap, right? And have some of those conversations. And you'll learn a lot from employees when you do that. If you meet resistance, there's a concept when we do our leadership training that we call the DNA of employee error, which means if you're giving an employee feedback, coaching, they didn't meet an expectation, you're giving them coaching. I'm watching to see, are they defensive about it? Defensive means, oh, what do you mean? Like she does the same thing every day, or nobody told me, or some defensive reaction. That's not a good sign. Okay. DNA. Are they nonchalant about it? Are they like, okay, thanks for the feedback, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll try harder tomorrow. Are they just like, they're not too worked up about it. They're just nonchalant. Okay, yeah, whatever. Maybe try to fire me. like I'm hearing you, but I'm not really too excited about what you're saying. That's not good either. The A is what you're looking for. You're looking for people that are hyper accountable, people that are frustrated with themselves a bit. When you start to give them feedback, they go, I know, I've been thinking about that since yesterday. I can't believe I didn't do X, Y, Z, or I just don't know how to get over this hurdle. Can you help me with it? You get a sense when you give people feedback of whether or not they want to achieve or whether they don't. And so we call that the DNA of employee error. So a big mistake leaders make is when they're giving feedback, they just think, well, I'm the one talking, the other person's listening, and nothing else is happening here. When in fact, what they should be listening to is this person defensive or nonchalant? If they are, that's not a good sign. And I need to up the intensity of my feedback to make sure they understand, hey, you gotta kick this in gear. If they're hyper accountable, the A, I'm gonna slow down my feedback. I'm gonna say, hey, don't worry about it. Like, you're doing great. Don't beat yourself up. Like, this is someone that wants to excel. And so I change my approach based on how they respond.
Is this something that you get from the survey?
That one, not so much. Understanding really feedback and coaching is something that every manager has to do inside of their department, right?
So it's the survey, consistently doing it. You're not waiting 12 or 18 months to go, let's discuss how's it going.
Right. Yeah. And so, when it comes to building better cultures, like managers they play an outsized role in building healthy cultures across a system. It's one thing to measure how employees feel, but data says from Gallup, who conducts the best research on this in the world, about 70% of how an employee feels about their whole company is related to the relationship they have with their boss. So if you want to make progress on culture, you need to make progress on managers, skill sets, mindsets, etc. That's the biggest way to move the needle. You can have a great communications team or a great benefits or whatever. That's not what really changes how employees feel about their job. The biggest factor there is manager and how the manager shows up.
Work-life balance. How do you help an employee that might be struggling at home but loves what they do?
Struggling at home, but loves what they do. I think that's a hard question unless I know more about what they're struggling with.
Well,
I
that's
could
why,
give you a tactic if you'd like. We could go that direction. Be
yeah,
happy to go
please
that
do,
way.
because I've heard of scenarios with people where it's like they love their boss, they love their job, they love the skill set, they get to, it's their dream, they're doing their passion, but it's
Hmm.
just everything that's distracting them isn't really work related. It's everything outside of it: husband, wife, family, parents,
Yeah.
whatever.
So uh, I'll give you two answers. Okay. The first answer is from an employer perspective. Make sure that we've designed this employment opportunity that the person, our hypothetical person, will call that their job. Okay. Have we designed their job in a way that they can create what I call work life integration? Okay. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like I come to work during these 45 hours and I cannot be interrupted, but these are sacred work hours. And then everything else over here is my life. If it's possible to design the job in a way that, you know what, yeah, like here's what you need to get done. But if you need to, if you got personal things that are happening during the workday, in the, whenever that is, great. Like make time for that. Do your work when you want to. You can structure that in an evening. You can structure it, a full work day. You can do some stuff on a weekend. You can not work so much this week, work more next week. And that depends a bit, salary versus hourly, obviously, and other things. But the first answer is, what is the employer doing to set expectations around work life integration and being flexible? Because the best way you can help that person solve their problem is for the employer to say, hey, I want you to make time for that important stuff outside of work. I also want you to get your job done. So let's be flexible. Let's partner. Let's collaborate. Let's find a win-win in how we can structure your employment so that you can do both. Right. And so that's step number one, is the employer needs to understand what their role is in, this person, they may not be able to solve that strain without a bit of flexibility from the employer side. Does that make sense?
It does. Now,
Yeah, you
go
want the
ahead.
second piece?
Yeah.
So the second piece is, if that person is having challenges that can be solved, okay, but they just don't know how to solve them that are outside of work, there's an approach I love that's called linkage. And linkage just means, as a manager, you figure out, is there anyone or is there anyone anywhere else in the company that could help that person solve whatever they have going on outside of work? Okay. Now, if it's a complex marital thing, like, okay, maybe we don't have anybody outside of a counselor or something. But if it's they're having car problems, or if it's they're have an aging parent that is, struggling and might need to go into an assisted living, or if it's, there's all kinds of things, parental kid issues. Like, we know somebody inside of the company that's probably been down that path, that knows
Mm-hmm.
something about that. And if I could just, as a manager or as a leader, just link that person to a resource, just introduce them and say, hey, I think this person could really help you out. That's a great way to show an employee that you care about their success outside of work without actually becoming a social worker or getting in the middle of it. Just saying, you need to talk to so and so because I think they could help you. And that's being a great linker. And that's a great way to help people solve some of those outside of work challenges without getting in the middle of it.
I love that strategy because, yeah, there's people everywhere that everyone's been through something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And we just overlook those resources. We're like,
mm-hmm.
oh, good luck with that problem. And it's like, the company probably has someone that could help them. And it wouldn't take that much time or effort. And that employee would really appreciate knowing that they work for a company that cared enough to make an intro, to
Yeah,
to to
and I'm
link.
glad you're saying this because there's a difference from we don't care, that doesn't matter, just do your job, versus we do care, we want to help you work through this, but it's not a nonprofit or a charity, or, like you said, you
Yes.
don't want to turn into the social worker because now all you're doing is, you could
Yes.
have 20 or 200 people on the team, and, everyone's got
Yes.
problems,
Yeah.
but
And for most employers, it's a mistake to open up to be too, oh, you're having financial problems? Well, maybe we could do a personal loan. Oh, you're having this? Well, maybe we could modify your schedule. Like, don't go down that path, because there's a lot of folks that are going to have these perpetual problems, and it creates a hardship on the employer side. But that doesn't mean I don't care.
mm-hmm.
It means, like, I want to help you solve those problems, but the company's not going to solve it, but I can introduce you to someone who I think
Yeah,
might be a good connection for you.
that's great. I love that, linking up with someone. Now, on the flip side, you have the superstar performer. What if you gave them the opportunity to excel? They are excelling, and now it's a year or two later, maybe three. They're doing phenomenal. What if they want to go faster than the company's ready for?
So I'm just a big believer. One of the leadership philosophies that we teach and we train on is that, um, a company or a leader needs to be invested in their people's success, both at work and in life. Okay. And so when you have that mindset as a leader of a company and you see somebody that wants to grow, what that employee needs to understand from you as a manager or as an organization is that you want them to be successful both at work and in life. And the more that you can communicate that, you may have some standard development opportunities that really a go-getter is going to take advantage of. Boom, boom, boom. And what we then very quickly need to pivot to is great. Like, where do you want to go? How can I help you advance your career? Now, we still need to focus on your current job responsibilities, but outside of that, like the more a manager really shows that they care about a rising star's success and growth, the more likely that person is A, to grow and be successful, but B, to stay, like to want to stay in that company. Because if you don't create those opportunities inside your organization, talent is going to go find those next growth opportunities somewhere else. And so it's actually really important from a retention standpoint that, in particular, younger employees and higher performing employees know that sort of the door is always open for them to chart their own path, choose their own development options, like find ways that they can learn and grow at this company and not have to jump around to find that career development that they may be looking for.
Out of all the companies you've helped and people that you've helped improve their culture working for the companies, what's the most interesting thing you've seen a company do?
I don't have any idea how to answer that one. I'll give you, this is not maybe the most important or the most powerful or the most profound, but you said interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So we often talk with organizations about their benefits, not because we're benefits experts, but because, you know, the exchange for an employee is like they give you their time and you give them, they give you their time and you give them compensation back. And a piece
Mm-hmm.
of that is benefits. And there's a lot of benefits that that organizations invest in that cost a lot of money that employees kind of take for granted and don't notice. Okay. So it doesn't feel like the best investment of a company's dollars to just put more money into a health plan when employees go, I don't know if it's good or bad or whatever. So one of my clients, they took this to a really fun level, and they said, "Hey, look, we want to create a really unique benefit that no other company has." And they said, "We're hiring a full-time handyman employed by the company that every employee can get 6 to 8 hours of handyman services at their house whenever they want it throughout the year." And so I just thought, hey, now that's at least a benefit that I've never seen or heard of before. They wanted to help people get their honeydew list done while they were at work working. And I thought that was a really cool idea of like something different, for goodness sake. So you could say, I work at a different kind of company, you know?
Oh, that's cool. So 6 or 8 hours a year, and it could be faucet, plumbing, light bulb, whatever.
Yeah, whatever you want. Like you got, you know, you need to spackle some drywall or, you know, whatever it is, like just make a list. And this gentleman was broadly capable and he'd tell you what he couldn't do. But yeah, you got a few little things you want to come get checked off. Like the company is invested in your success at home, just like we are at work.
Okay, you don't need to say the name of the company, but how many people did they have?
That was a company with about 500 employees in
Okay,
their home office.
and they were all in the same location?
They had remote employees that could not take advantage of that benefit, but the majority of their employees were in one place.
Okay, and do you know if they paid the handyman a salary or if they just had an exclusive partnership and they were the number one client?
He was a on full-time employee, so they paid him a salary, and then he would just go to where he was needed.
Wow, that's kind of cool because I would imagine, and I don't know, but I would imagine he's not getting crazy things. I'm sure 25 of the people all have the same, hey, change the light bulb or fix, the sink's loose or something. It's not like the house is
Yeah.
flooded and you need to remodel it.
Yeah. And just like any other benefit, like surprisingly, a lot of people don't use it. You know, it's like, oh my gosh, like I could think of a bunch of things, but a lot of employees, like it's nice to have and it gets talked about, but only a small portion of the employees actually say, hey, could you come do these things? Right. And those folks really appreciated it. The backstory on that is he actually was a friend of the founder, and the founder of the company was he was lost in between jobs, and the founder kind of just said, hey, why don't you come, like I have an idea, and it worked out great. So
How long do you do it for?
I believe that company had a little bit of challenges and did some downsizing after a while. But it went on for probably 3 years. And
Okay,
then
that's
I
cool.
think they had to trim back a few of the more ostentatious benefits.
Have you heard of anyone that does like a personal chef, even if it's a company that size, even like, free food or whatever, and you have a personal chef like,
Absolutely. Yeah. I have had several clients that provide on-site meals, whether those are catered, by an outside company that are catered in, or they have a chef on site that, really spoils them and and creates great meals. I don't think I've ever worked with a client that goes much beyond that, that says like, hey, we're making food for you to take home or anything like that. But
yeah,
on site, definitely. And that's a great perk. In particular, it seems like in some of the more tech-oriented fields, like they're interested in those types of things where it's like, hey, we're having a gourmet lunch provided on site every day. And I think that's just great when companies can do something like that.
yeah, you got my wheel spinning now, and I like good food. That's why I was like, oh, I wonder if they do a chef or something. And
Yeah.
um, so you're talking about these companies that have substantial number of employees. What would you say to someone if they only have 5 versus 500? What are some things they could do to improve?
Invest in yourself, figure out what does great leadership look like and be that leader for your team, right? And so we at Better Culture, we do leadership training for large organizations, and we have like video-based courses that just one person,
Mm,
they can go out and take the video-based course and go through it themselves. It really, being in a building a great culture is really just it's first about mindset, like understanding what does it mean to be a great leader. And we teach 7 principles of leadership that are focused on things like building pride and showing appreciation and helping people grow and develop, holding people accountable. And once you have that mindset, then you start to hang skills on that framework. It's like, oh, how do you build pride? How do you hold people accountable? How do you have tough conversations? And if a leader wants to have a better culture, start with a better mindset and then start to add those skills, and the rest takes care of itself.
what have out of everyone you've helped, what have you seen happen to the bottom line after everyone's figured this out, went through your program, implemented it? How long does it take before they start going, wow, you know what, we increased whatever by X%?
So there are always a lot of variables at play when you're making an investment in anything in business, right? And so we don't get to measure that on most of our organizations. But I'll give you an example that I've heard probably 4 or 5 times that is you'll see why it's so directly tied to revenue in a second. But in the last few years, I bet I've had 4 or 5 clients that I've worked with personally that have told me the same story. And they've said, we had a culture problem in our sales division.
Mm,
Okay. Sales. Okay. And they said, we have a top producer who's a culture problem. Okay. One of our top sales people, but they're not living up to the attitudes and the behaviors and the standards. And, they're hard to work with. They're
mm-hmm.
toxic to their coworkers. They got a big ego. They got whatever it is, but they're worried to approach that person or to deal with it because they're a top producer. Like it would be, what would happen if we fired him or if he left or she did whatever. And after the fact, these folks have told me the same story. They say, you know what? It was scary. We had the conversation. The person ended up parting ways. Now, some of these folks you can save, right? But if they part ways, and they said the rest of the sales team more than made up for it after they left. And I think that's, when you're talking about revenue and profits, it's if when you get these vacuums off of our teams and you let everybody feel excited about what they can contribute, et cetera, you actually tend to see a much higher net performance than when you had one like high performer that was sort of um, raining on everybody else's parade to a
Yeah,
degree,
suffocating
so
them.
suffocating them.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting because, yeah, you would think, oh, they're bringing majority of the sales, and it's like, no, everyone else just didn't put in 10, 15 extra percent because they didn't want to deal with this person.
Yeah. Yeah. And now there's going to be exceptions. That's not always going to work that way. But that's how culture works is if you can create the type of team that people are excited to be there to give their best, et cetera, you do see higher performance, right? And if you have someone that's inhibiting the culture, then that's why you have a drag on performance, right? It's not like, well, I didn't make more sales calls because he's a jerk. Like that's not it's not a direct connection. It's like an indirect connection. I
Hmm.
didn't make more sales calls because I don't really like my job, you know? Like, and the
And
job reason I don't like my job is because I have to work with these jerks, right?
sure.
So
This is why I like discussing this. Like when we're doing publishing books for companies, it's so transformative and transformational. Like earlier when you go, oh, I don't know if I can do it in two answers. It's like there's so many benefits, and there's many direct ways and indirect ways too. Like you're saying, it's like, well, it wasn't exactly this, but because of that, this, and you get this compound effect.
I agree.
So who are we firing this week?
Who are we firing this week? We're firing our vacuums.
Okay.
We're firing the people who are dragging the culture down, who are tough to work with, who think that, by finding problems and, venting and complaining and, telling us their sob story about every interaction, of all time, like those folks are, they're just, I want to save them first. I want to give them feedback. I want to give them coaching, but eventually I want to let them go bless some other organization with their company.
We have an opportunity for you
Have an
to
opportunity.
find a different area to work.
That's right.
Um, I could make so many jokes. What was I going to ask you?
I think about companies mathematically. I was an engineer originally, and now I'm in this squishy culture space. But if you want to have a better culture and you have 100 employees, okay, you just plot them on a distribution of like
Yeah,
how many great ones, how many so-so, how many not so good. Like if you want that curve to shift so that the average of your culture is better, remove a few vacuums, hire some people that are at least average. That shifts the curve. It makes your culture better, right? Take the folks in the middle and coach them up and help them be more like stars. Shift their attitudes and behaviors in a way that's productive. Like all of those things help make just steady and consistent improvement to make your culture healthier and stronger. And it's really the organizations that are doing something at a high frequency to make their culture better that make the most progress. Like if you're not, you don't have to be perfect, but you got to work on it
you got to be
regularly. And if you
trying.
work on it regularly, you'll make a lot of progress.
I did know what I was going to ask you, and you were talking about, get rid of the toxic ones, but is there anything you recommend for not bringing them on to begin with? Is there any filters to improve culture where you go, hey, let's not get people even in here instead of like this churn of, hey, we get 10 new people and six of them are good?
I'm not an expert on hiring and
Okay.
interviewing, but yes, like don't settle. Um, you know, be particular on the way in, have high standards on at hiring, and like uh, hire slow, fire fast, basically
Mm-hmm.
is good advice. Like be intentional, know what you want. If you can get reference checks, like that is so valuable to hear, like from someone else that actually has worked with this person, what kind of an employee they are. People can put on a good face in an interview, especially if they've been coached. And so it makes it hard to know exactly what you're getting. There are personality tools and screening tools out there that I'm not a big fan of. Um, Not to say that there isn't some value there, but ultimately, like know what you want, be clear about it, do everything you can to see if someone matches that culture that you're looking for. And tell them, be like, hey, if you're not a fit, like you're not going to like it here because you're going to get coached day one. Like, hey, that's not how we work here. And then day two, and then day three, and then eventually you're either going to decide, oh, I want to change the way I show up, or I'm going to go work somewhere else.
Love the insight. I have a question for you before we do the imperfect action round, and you get to pick a color.
Pick a color. Do I wait till it stops to pick one?
You can,
Yellow or black? Are those my options here?
yes.
Okay, let's go yellow.
Okay. What's a dream of yours that you're still looking to accomplish or achieve?
This is a pipe dream of mine.
Good.
It's just, can I just do personal or do you want work related?
Yes, on both.
Okay. So personally, I have these fun like aspirations that like sound great, but I'm sure would not be. Um, but I want to live on a sailboat at some point. Like
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
want to cruise the Caribbean or do something like that. I want to have my own boat, want to have a few months to just like see what life would look like if you were living on a boat and had the ability to go where you want, do what you want, etc. I think personally that would be exciting. My wife doesn't think it's nearly as exciting, so we're still trying to figure out how we make that work.
Would you still be working, or is this after retirement?
I think that would be what's the term? A sabbatical. That would be
Okay.
you could call it retirement, or you could call it, hey, I'll be back in a couple months.
No, because Starlink now, I mean, I'm legit asking you. You could
I
be like,
know.
I want to do everything from there.
No, I don't want to do everything from there. I wanna fish and swim and, lay on the beach and do
I'm
whatever the
with
hell
you.
counts.
I'm a avid boater, love it, and also I do enough with electronics. Like I got three screens running this beast right now, and it's like, no, I'm
Yeah.
going swimming, and I'm not
I want
bringing
my
the
biggest technology
laptop with
problem to
me.
be how could I get a hot shower? Like I'm not thinking like luxury yacht. I'm thinking like, a catamaran that's got a few miles on her.
Nice. I appreciate you for sharing that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
We're going to thank our sponsor and come back for the imperfect action round. And we are back with the imperfect action round. Brett, are you ready to take imperfect action?
We'll see.
All right, you've been sharing so many great things in detail. I'm going to give you a little break for a few minutes, and these are 60-second or less answers. Three of them. What's the fastest path to the cash or profits?
In any organization,
Yes.
referrals from your network, people that you know, asking for referrals. If you're struggling, if revenue is important and you need fast cash, call the people that you know, tell them what you're trying to get done, ask them for a referral. Who do they know? Quit the Facebook ads or whatever else and call the people that you know and tell them, hey, who do you know I should talk to?
I gotcha. Okay. Number two, what's the biggest problem you see your prospects making and the fastest way for them to fix it?
I think the biggest problem that they are making is, and I mentioned this earlier in the show, it's that they don't have a strategic plan for
Mm-hmm.
culture. Did I mention that? Maybe I didn't mention that earlier in the show. That they can't tell me what their strategy is to have a better culture 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years from now. We can help you build a strategy for culture, and it makes a whale of a difference if you just put a little bit of time and investment into building a strategy for how your employees are going to love their job more next year than they do this year. But most companies don't have it, so that's the biggest
I
mistake
like
they make.
that. Yeah, you made a good point with it because there's a strategy to grow the company, the sales, and all this other stuff like the outside, but you could have a mess internally, and it's going to make it a lot harder to get the other stuff accomplished.
Yeah, and we don't have to solve everything; just got to have a plan to make it better.
Number three, what is the best way to maximize customer lifetime value?
Hmm. Build real relationships. Depends on the kind of business that you have, but when your clients know that you're 100% invested in their success, right? That it's not just a product sale or a service, that you want to be a full partner to a client, right? That if you see an opportunity that can help them, that you share it, that they know who you are and what motivates you. Really building real relationships with your customers, whether that's through a support function, whether that's through a sales function, whether that's through a product delivery function. Making sure that the relationship is about more than just the product or the service is the best way to uh, maintain good client relationships.
Very good. As a publisher, I got to ask you about books. Which ones would you recommend to Expert Authority World?
I don't have, this is a bad answer to a publisher, but I don't have one book because I work in the leadership and culture space. There's not, I need to write one, but there's not one that I can point to that's like, that's our philosophy. That's what we do. And so I hesitate to suggest book recommendations.
Is there two or three you go, these are probably in the top five, though?
Again, I hesitate. So, you
Okay.
could go, there's a lot of directions I could go. There's a lot of great leadership books out there. I just don't want to endorse one over the rest.
Okay. Is there any book you got something out of, whether it's business or personal?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a fan of anything Tim Ferriss writes. I like whether that's the 4 Hour Work Week or the Tools of Titans or the things that help people invest in themselves. Those are great books. I'm a fan of some of the business operations books that are out there. I don't use EOS or Traction myself, but I find those types of books and frameworks interesting and inspiring for organizations that want
Yes.
to get a grip on their
It
company.
honestly sounds like you have it too. And when you were talking about, our tenants and pillars and all this, I'm like, you got your stuff dialed in.
Yeah, we have a clear set of things that we recommend. Here's a process. Here's exactly what you do. Here's exactly how you do it. And that's part of the strategy that companies usually don't have. And if you want to have a better strategy for your culture, give Better Culture a ring.
Where would you like people to learn more?
Well, I'd love you to go to betterculture.com. That's the best place to go. We've got a ton of free resources and insights. And specifically for listeners to your show, I've got a little giveaway. If I can do a
Of
little giveaway
course.
for you.
Please do. Thank you.
If you'll go to betterculture.com/expert authority, okay? Just betterculture.com with expert authority at the end. Uh, what you'll find is a page that has a couple things. The main thing on there that I want people to have is what we call our people leader checklist. So it's one thing to say, here's what managers need to do to build a great culture. It's another thing to say, what makes for a good leader in the first place? What characteristics
Mm,
make for a good leader? And so we've got a listing of 21 things that you should look for, whether it's yourself and you want to grow, or whether you're promoting leaders and managers inside of a company. Use the checklist before you promote someone into a leadership role. They'll be a lot more effective if you put the right person in that role if you pick the right person in the first place. Let's leave it there.
I hope to God I still get qualified for my own company. I
Well,
want
you
to
won't
check
be
this out.
perfect. You won't go 21 for 21. So
Does anyone?
does anyone? No, I know I don't. So
Well, Brett, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate everything you've shared with us.
yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for the time. You have a great show and do a great service. And if there's anything I can do to help make the world a better place to work, that's my job. That's my mission.
Well, thanks again for your expert authority insights. Expert Authority World, we have another great